Finished training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn. Welcome to How We're the Podcast, and you join us today during the second international break after only 7 games into the new season, which is annoying, but there's always a silver lining, and it does give us a good chance to take another breath and talk to some fantastic people about themselves as well as where Sunderland stand at the moment, and today we have exactly that. It's the first chance we've had to speak to him on How We're the Podcast, and he was one of my first heroes when I was growing up watching Denis Smith's side as we climbed out of Division 3 and back to the top flight. He's also in a very small group of players that played in 2 major cup finals for Sunderland, played in a playoff final at Wembley, enjoyed 2 promotions, we'll not mention the 3 relegations. He played a total of 443 games in the red and white, and if that's not all, he's been one of the voices that has described our ascent in recent years on BBC Radio Newcastle, because today we speak to Gary Bennett, MBE. Hello, Gary.
Hello. That's some introduction, isn't it?
Well, it's deserved, isn't it? Surely.
Thank you.
Just on the MBE, Gary, do you make sure all your friends and family address you as MBE?
Sir.
Sir.
Right. No, just said, that's a fantastic accolade. A surprise, but I'm not going to give it away.
Absolutely. I mean, speaking of family, Gary, is Dave talking to you yet after the Coventry playoff final game?
Yes, he is talking to me now, because we've got to say that Coventry City at the present moment, top of the league, and they're absolutely flying at the moment. Won again at the weekend, 5-0. They won the week before, scoring 4 goals, so they're scoring goals for fun. And they're doing quite well. So, they might have, shall we say, that experience and of that semi-final against Sunderland, home and away, put them in good stead. And from our point of view, is one of the best, shall we say, atmospheres at the stadium ever.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, if Coventry were like Sheffield United at the minute, you might not be speaking.
That's right. They wouldn't, because he'll be still, shall we say, moaning or groaning about it. Obviously, that result at the stadium, but because they're doing well, that they've moved on, and they've got a good opportunity. They've got a good chance.
Yeah, I mean, we've only had a few away games, but are you enjoying following the lads around in the Premier League? I mean, is the food a bit better and Coventry positions a bit more comfortable?
Well, I think overall, not just from my point of view, but from a supporter's point of view, from a football club's point of view, I think we all feel and see the difference what the Premier League's all about. It's such a huge, the best league in the world. You can see the amount of, shall we say, marketing, advertising, what goes out there. And it's great to be in the Premier League. It's daily. And you've got to give credit to the football club as well, because you've got to say the work which they've done not just on the field, but off the field, is an eye-opener, and credit to him.
Yeah. Are you the same as Nick in some ways? Because he says, getting back in the Premier League, he's seeing people who he hasn't maybe seen for 10 years since we were last there. Are you seeing some kind of co-commentators that you're like, oh, I haven't seen you for years and years?
Oh, that's right. You come across co-commentators and people who basically don't do the Championship. All they do is the Premier League. So, going to places as we've just been to, Old Trafford at the weekend, going to some of these places, Arsenal and places like that. It's been a long time since we've been there. We can go look back at going to places like Morecambe and Accrington, where there's no cover, and when it's raining. So, yeah, it's a huge difference. But credit to the football club again, and the football players as well.
Yeah, and we left poor Gary Howers behind in the Championship, commentating on Bristol City, and we left him behind. But anyway, we'll get back onto the current state of play and how good this Sunderland side is in a bit. But we couldn't let this opportunity slide without speaking to you a bit about your career and time as a player with Sunderland. But just on kind of those really early days, because I grew up with stories. I've got an older brother, and he was always about Manchester because he was in the Joy Division and all that. So it was the late 70s, early 80s. But you grew up in Manchester in the 60s and 70s. So, can you tell us about the kind of Manchester you grew up in?
Yeah, Manchester's a vibrant city. You've got two massive clubs there. And, when you're talking about the 60s and 70s, both clubs had, shall we say, heroes at the football club. Manchester City itself, where I started my career off, but Manchester United as well, obviously winning the European Cup in 1968 with some great players, like Denis Laws, your Bobby Charlton, your George Best and people like that. But then you've got Manchester City just over the road as well, who had some fantastic players like Colin Bell, your Francis Lee. So, yeah, the two Manchesters were, fantastic. They were the clubs which everybody wanted to support.
Yeah. Well, you did end up in Man City. I mean, were they pretty good at bringing in young players? Because, I mean, were you brought in, were you scouted? And the other question I wanted to ask was, when you were young as well, were you always a defender growing up? Because when I saw you, it was almost the last place you wanted to be, but you always wanted to get forward.
Yeah, again, you're looking at Manchester City, who is known for bringing young players through. At the time when I was at Manchester City, again, on the other side of it as well, Manchester City is one of the clubs. We talk about West Bromwich Albion, about making that breakthrough, especially for black players. But at Manchester City, did the same. At the time, there was myself, there was my brother, there was a lad called Alex Williams, who was near enough. I think he was the first black goalkeeper. Alex Williams, who played. Clive Wilson was there as well, who went on and had a great career at Tottenham, Chelsea, Queen's Park Rangers. We had Roger Palmer, who was a hero at the likes of Manchester City and also at Oldham Athletic. So at that time, we had 5 black players at the football club. And, it was something which obviously I wanted to follow in my brother's footsteps. And again, when you look at Manchester City, the old ground and where it was situated, it was situated right in the heart of Moss Side, which is fantastic for especially young players, black players as well, growing up. That's where they wanted to play. Going on about my position, I used to play midfield. I used to play at times as a striker, and that's how I went to the club, and they turned me into a so-called centre back.
It seemed like it was against your will, though, for watching you later on.
No, again, it was something new. Playing centre back. I had called Steve Fleet and Dave Ewing. Used to look after us for the youth team and the reserves. When they seen something in me in regards of pace, and they used that. And obviously coming to Sunderland at the time as well, I think it was something different, something new, especially for the supporters. Obviously, I played under Len Ashurst at the time at Cardiff City, and he obviously moved on to Sunderland as a manager. And it was something which, I was able to bring to my game, where all of a sudden you had a centre-back who was on the ball and he crossed the halfway line without getting a nosebleed. So, it was something, and people sort of, when I first played for Sunderland, and I was thinking, whoa, hold on a minute, what's he doing? With a centre back, and he's going forward. Oh, it was part and parcel of my game. I like to get on the ball. I like to play. I like to get forward, and it was something which, I think the supporters loved.
Oh, absolutely. I remember those marauding runs from coming through the middle of the pitch. But you mentioned there that you played under Len Ashurst at Cardiff, and again, you said he went on to Sunderland. Were you expecting him to come in for you? Had he given you the nod when he kind of left and thought, I'm going to come back for you or anything like that?
Well, he did give me a heads up. I needed a situation where I was at Cardiff City. I knew that I was coming to the end of my contract. And I think he also knew that there's one or two other clubs in for me. So, he said, look, he's got a great opportunity to go back and manage Sunderland, who was in the top league at the time. And he also said, look, would you be interested if I come back for you? And, again, you want to play at the top level? And I said, yes.
Yeah, and there was nobody, because you made that jump up to the top division because surely I'll be expecting a couple of other clubs to be looking at you at that point.
Yeah, as I said, I had the opportunity to go to Crystal Palace. I went down to Crystal Palace. I had talks with Steve Coppell, who was the manager at the time, and Ron Nodes, who was the chairman. Basically, I had agreed everything. I had a great.
Wow.
They offered me a great contract. Agreed everything, but in the back of my mind, I was hoping that Len was going to come in first at Sunderland. I went back, and after a couple of days, it happened. He came in, and I went to a tribunal, and they set a fee of 65 grand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and then you go into that first season, because you were then a first division player, which must have been a big thing for you to get into that first division, almost kind of, because you went down with Cardiff, built yourself back up, and got there with Sunderland. And, there was that big season, that first season. We got relegated, but reached the League Cup final in that season. Obviously, Sunderland, it's never dull, is it? It's Sunderland. But Len Ashurst only had that 1 year. Do you think he was unlucky to just have that 1 year?
It was a little bit unlucky. We started off very well at Sunderland. We was in the top six early doors. We were doing really well, and we went on a cup run. Now, you can look at the cup run and maybe think, did it affect us? The cup run was great because we got to the cup final. But after the cup, after we lost that game, unfortunately, our form in the league took a dive.
Yeah, and there was them huge games at the Chelsea. I mean, those games must have almost taken it out of you kind of mentally, because those were huge games, and everything around them, the pressure. I mean, I remember the crowd trouble in the semi-final at Stamford Bridge and all that. But that must have been, so much attention must have been taken on that it's almost natural that there's a come down when you come back to the league game.
Yeah, definitely so. As I said, you're going into the League Cup, and then you're thinking, it'd be great to have a good run, and then you end up finding yourselves basically in the semi-final. And you're thinking, wow, we've got an opportunity here. And obviously over the two legs, you get there, and then you're thinking, well, we've got a chance of winning it. And that's how we felt at the time. You're playing Norwich in the cup final. And we're beating them, I think it was a week or 2 weeks before that as well. But unfortunately, it just didn't happen on the day. But again, going back, that's obviously, for a player, that's what they wanted to do. You want to play in the top flight. You want to play in the cup final. You want to play at Wembley, the old Wembley Stadium. That's what you want to do. And, that's what the supporters want to do as well. They want to be on a cup run. They want to go to Wembley. So it's the same for the players as well.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, because at Wembley, I know it wasn't the FA Cup, but at that point you must have thought, well, I've cracked it here. I'm playing in a major cup final at Wembley. And that when you get there, can you kind of describe what the pressure's like, especially playing for a club like Sunderland, who maybe you're not really expecting to get there the next season, because you're looking at it. It had been a decade since we'd last played in a major final. So when you get there, it's almost the pressure is on to say you want to try and take full advantage of it, because it doesn't come around too often.
Yeah, definitely so. And I think we all know when you get to a final, you're on a good run. All of a sudden, the city takes off. You know, everybody's behind you. You know, no matter where you go, everywhere was red and white. And you get to the final, and you know the city of Sunderland deserted. You know, you go down to Wembley, and obviously it's all new. You know, it's a fantastic experience, and you know, again, that was my first sort of experience, and a lot of for the supporters as well. The amount of supporters which went down, you know, because at the end of the day it was called the friendly final. You know, because you know the way the two supporters got on, but again, from a Norwich City point of view, they couldn't believe the amount of supporters we had. You know, at that time, Wembley Stadium held 100,000. We must have had maybe 60,000 there or more. I know, and yeah, we got beat, but I think Norwich City supporters acknowledged or couldn't believe, obviously, the plaudits what they got from the Sunderland supporters. You know, even though we lost, we still obviously applauded them. You know, it could have gone either way. We missed the penalty, didn't we? Clive Walker. So it was one of them games. We didn't, and it was on the TV as well. You know, it was a Milk Cup final on the TV. That was like huge as well at the time. You know, obviously you look at football now. You know, you get football on 7 days a week. You know, at that time, you know, being on live TV was it's a big call.
Yeah, the look I get from my son when I tell him there was only one game on a week, and that wasn't all weeks. He looks at us as if I'm stupid. But with then, of course, go into the Laurie McMenemy years, and he had almost 2 years, not quite 2 years. But on paper, he bought some good players. I mean, you look at the likes of Eric Yates and George Burley, who had fantastic careers. I mean, can you put your finger on it why it went so wrong? I mean, was it his style? Was the players he brought in maybe at a certain stage of their career? I mean, what was it that made it go so wrong?
What made it go so wrong? But, you know, again, obviously from my experience and, you know, what we've seen with managers, we've had some very, very good managers at the football club. You know, and, you know, Dick Advocaat, you got Martin O'Neill, you can go on and on and on. We've had some tremendous managers, yet they've all struggled. Majority of them have struggled at the football club, and you know, people who were scratching their heads and asking the reasons why. What is it? How come you can't be successful at Sunderland Football Club? Is it the demands too high? Expectations? You know, it's the same with Laurie McMenemy. Everybody wanted Laurie McMenemy here at the football club at the time. They was thinking, obviously, with his roots as well from being in the Northeast, they're thinking great, and the job what he did at Southampton, they're thinking brilliant. We're on a roll here. He came in, he brought some great players into the football club, the likes of Eric Gates, your Frank Grays, your Alan Kennedys, your George Burleys, you know, David Swindlers came in as well. You know, so we had experience, but again, it's not just off the field, it's on the field where we've got to perform. And you've got to say, maybe you look back now, you know, you look back on them players who's coming, you know, fantastic players, and it's about time. They didn't have the time to, shall we say, gel, get up and running, you know, and maybe it was maybe shock to their system playing, you know, in the league, in that league, you know, because we were relegated. So it took them time to, shall we say, find their feet. And unfortunately, Laurie McMenemy lost his job. You know, you look back now and then you're thinking, wow, you know, the likes of Eric Gates, everybody thought, what the hell's going on with Eric Gates here? You know what I mean? He's, you know, he comes here with that reputation and couldn't perform. But then, you know, you look back and you're thinking, what a fantastic footballer he was, you know, and, you know, they found that partnership, obviously, with Eric and obviously Gabardini as well, was tremendous.
Yeah. Well, just towards the end of that, and you mentioned Laurie McMenemy lost his job. The paper talk was that he disappeared, but Bob Stokoe came in and try and help us trying to get over the line in terms of surviving and not going down to Division 3. I mean, was there only so much he could do at that point? Because, you know, and we have to remember as well that it was typical Sunderland. You know, I remember that, you know, there was the Proctor penalty in the game before, and then and then it was typical Sunderland that we got relegated on away goals when Gillingham had an extra half hour at Roker Park as well.
Yeah, And I think if you reflect back on then, you're talking about how football has changed. Again, bad result against Barnsley. We expected, the 4 results had to go against us, and they did.
Yeah.
and if you remember, they just started to bring in them playoffs into. So it was like, if you finished like 4th bottom, you played the 3rd top of the league below. That was the first time it was brought in. And, obviously we played Gillingham and it ended up 6-6, I think it was. And we got relegated on the away goals. And I think it was never followed up after that relegation scenario. I think it was scrapped.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was what it was. And again, there was change of managers. It was fantastic to play under Bob Stoker. Obviously, he's a legend at Sunderland Football Club for what he's done. So yeah, I think we had about 7 or 8 games under Bob Stoker at the time. So it was great to play under him because he kept calling me Gordon Bennett. Never mind Gary Bennett. But no, it was a lovely man, lovely man. But yeah. And obviously Denis Smith came in.
Yeah. Still sends shivers down my spine when I hear Tony Cascarino on TalkSport. But in that summer, Denis Smith, of course, came in from York, and he came in with Viv Busby. I mean, did the two of them just kind of breathe life into the club straight as soon as they walked through the doors?
Yeah, they did. Good cop, bad cop. That's how managers were. You had one who obviously put out all the rules, and he had another one who just softens the blow. And Viv was the one who linked everything together. He was a great coach. Got on really, really well with the players. And Denis was the one who obviously put out the ins and outs, the rules, the team. This is how it is, like it or lump it or whatever. And Buzzer was the ones who just softened things down. And to be fair to Denis, from day one when he came in, at that time he said, look, whatever he's getting paid, his bonuses or whatever, he'll give that up if he doesn't get promotion in the first season. So that's how assured he was about getting this club out of that 3rd division, because it was the first time Sunderland was in that division. Yeah. But saying that, he made some good buys. You talk about, I just mentioned Marco Gabardini coming in. Everyone's never heard of him. I'd never heard of him. And we always talk about a great story where you're thinking, we've signed Marco Gabardini, Italian. We thought, great. And at that time, we was training up at Durham. And we thought, Marco Gabardini's here. And me and Casey, we was looking out through the window and thinking, where's Marco Gabardini? Because we was expecting this big 6'2", tan, jet black hair Italian. We had a 5'10", blonde, pale as a bottle of milk. Marco Gabardini. So I was thinking, right, he can't be any good. But yeah, obviously he proved us all wrong. He's a fantastic player. And, the likes of John McPhail came in. My partner who played alongside, he was brilliant. Fantastic. Steady away, steady Eddie, John McPhail. Very, very good player. And, the likes of John Kay came in as well. And everybody knows what John Kay is all about. He just defies what Sunderland is.
Yeah, there's a brilliant story. But Denis Smith tells in his book apparently that he asked Dave Bassett what he was like as a person, and he said, "We'll put it this way: he moved from Arsenal to Wimbledon to get closer to Sunderland."
I tell you, if you went into battle, you'd have John Kay in your team.
Oh, absolutely,
all the time.
Absolutely. But just in terms of Denis Smith, was he, because I think he likes to tell everyone how many bones he broke in his body as a defender for Stoke. Was he good for you in that sense?
Yeah, he was great for me. To be fair, Denis and me, well, I wouldn't say we clashed, but Denis was one of them, out and out centre halves, head it, kick it, break his nose, broke this, broke that. He used to join in training just to prove how good he was and how hard he was. He liked to put in 1 or 2 tackles. It used to be great, the training. But again, obviously, he's seen me as this centre half, and you're thinking, Benno, you're not a centre half. You've got to stay back, just defend. And he used to think, what's he doing? Where's he going? He's off again. You're thinking, how am I going to keep hold of him? Oh, yeah. I used to put one or two, shall we say, shivers through Denis Smith's spine.
You like to keep him on his toes, but yeah, we of course went back up to the second division, and then while we're in the second division, of course we can't really go without mentioning drawing Coventry in League Cup quarter final, and you famously introduced David Speedie to the fans in the clock stand paddock, which I'm sure he appreciated, and so did the fans. But what people don't maybe see when you look at the replay, your knee's strapped up and the ball's rolling out of play, and he takes a kick at it. I mean, was that just the final straw, or was it just because of that incident? Because I imagine it wasn't the only thing to get that sort of reaction.
No, not at all. I think, again, he's just brought a book out, and he's had a little pop in regards of, he keeps bringing up at this. I said, well, if I keep bringing it up, or people keep bringing it up, you shouldn't mention it in your book. But obviously, you've mentioned it in your book for a reason.
Yeah.
But no, David Speedie, he's a good player. You don't take anything away from him, but he's one of them players who everybody would want to kick, because he was a, shall we say, a pest. So we've always had an ongoing battle with him. You know what you're going to get. And obviously on that night there, I just thought that he's went a little bit over the top on my knee. And then basically I just lost the plot as well.
Yeah. Well, he was a good player, but I was still surprised he signed for Liverpool. But anyway, the second division time, it obviously led to, playing Newcastle in that semi-final. It all played out on the last day of the season when people were changing positions. We got beat, I think, against Oldham from memory. But you were struggling with a bit of a knee injury actually towards the end. I mean, was there any doubt that you were going to play in those games? Because I don't think there's ever been bigger games between Sunderland and Newcastle.
No, as I said, just leading up to the game, I had a slight injury, and it was a case of, was it going to make it or not? And we had a tremendous run at the time. Newcastle finished third in the league. And, at that time, I think they must have finished 12 points ahead of us at that time. So, and we finished in sixth. So obviously we had the playoff against them. And it was a case of, was I going to make the first game, which was at Roker Park on a Sunday. And I made it, got through a fitness test. And we drew 0-0. But obviously everybody remembers the last minute of the game where we was awarded a penalty, and John Burridge saved it, from Paul Hardiman spot kick. And then everyone's thinking, we come off the pitch, they go down into their changing rooms, go into ours, one or two heads are down, and you can just hear them cheering and shouting and, basically thinking, well, just turn up on the Wednesday night and the game's won. But everybody knows that we went to St. James's Park on that night, and, you've got to say it was a quite toxic atmosphere at St. James's Park, and we went there and got a tremendous result.
Yeah, it takes some mental strength. I always remember at St. James's Park, it wasn't that long into the game, and I think John Kay wiped Billy
Askew out.
Yeah, and I think there was about 500 fans trying to get John Kay until they realised it was John Kay and they went back into the stand.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, John Kay wiped out Billy Askew, and the surge of supporters coming forward, thinking they tried to get on the pitch, and they're thinking, wow. But they did get on the pitch later on, didn't they, onto the game. But yeah, you look back on games like that and you realise what derby games are all about, what it means to the two teams. Tremendous games to play in.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned, because obviously Marco Gabbiadini scored at St. James's Park, and that goal that he scored was almost, if you took that goal that Marco scored, it was almost the blueprint for him and Eric Gates up front. That it was, Eric Gates knew where Marco was going to run, and Marco just played the ball to Gates, made a run, played him in, goal. I mean, you look at Marco Gabbiadini, and you played with some fantastic strikers at Sunderland. I mean, does Marco Gabbiadini rank up there? I mean, it was 3 seasons pretty much solid of scoring goals, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's an exciting striker. For the supporters to see somebody like that because he had everything. You know, he wasn't the biggest. He's 5'10", but he had a great spring. He could jump. He could head the ball. But also, I think at that time, seeing somebody with that pace and strength, all of a sudden, you put the ball into him, and then out of the blue, he'll go past one, go past two, and it'll end up in the back of the net. It was tremendous to see. He was an exciting player, but also when you've got the likes of Eric, who is a fantastic footballer, his knowledge of the game, his timing of his passes, where to pass it, how to find him. They had a great partnership.
Yeah. And obviously we ended up going up through Swindon Town doing what they did. But I want to talk about that because this was my first home game, the Manchester United game. This is my first game at Roker Park. And I was actually in the main stand paddocks on the Roker end side.
Okay.
And I was perfectly placed last few minutes when you flicked the ball over Gary Pallister's head and then slotted it past Les Sealey for Sunderland to win 2-1. I mean, there's two questions I want to ask about this. Can you remember why you were in the position you were in with 2 minutes to go? and the other one is, did you actually score a better goal for Sunderland?
Sometimes you do things and it's like everybody else. I'm, normal as anybody else. The night before a game or whatever it is, everybody has dreams. Everybody dreams about, scoring in the last minute, scoring the winner. You ask anybody, oh, I've just scored. That's how it is. Obviously, you got PlayStations now, whatever, and that's how. But they still have that feeling. They still have that memory, or that's what they try to do. Marco Gabardini or Wilson Eastwood or whoever they are. Thinking last minute of the game, I score and they're all over the moon and win the game. That's on the PlayStation. Now, you dream about that and then you do it in real life. Some of the sort of things which go through you and, and then you wake up and you think, oh, it's a dream, but actually, to actually do it, I was up there pushing forward and for some unknown reason, I've gone on a run and the ball's being played. And, it's just one of them things which everything fell into place. Obviously you get the chip over his head, the ball bounces and then you hit it and it's a sweet hit and it curls and it goes in and it's the winning goal, 89th minute. You're thinking, wow, can't get any better. And it's against Manchester United. The icing on the cake and you're thinking, it's basically comic stuff, innit? These are the things which you maybe read in a comic.
Yeah. I blame that goal for me thinking it would happen every week, Gary, and Sunderland would beat Manchester United all the time. But looking at that season, look, we went up in strange circumstances, but obviously you look at what Denis Smith had, and John McPhail and Eric Gates left, and Kevin Ball and Peter Davenport came in, but they were like for like replacements, really. We weren't really able to add anyone. Did the players know it was always going to be tough that year?
No, we always knew that it was going to be tough, but we thought we were good enough to stay in the division. And I think that was maybe our downfall, really, because, you look at the way we played really, really well that year. We played some very, very good football, but we didn't know how to shut up shop, and I think that was our downfall because, there was games where I wouldn't say we dominated games. I would say that we was in there and we should have seen the game out. We should have managed the game and we didn't. And we ended up maybe drawing or losing late on.
Yeah. I think
football, but you don't get anything for playing attractive football, do you?
Yeah. We got a lot of plaudits that season. I think we took the lead on 11 separate occasions that season or something.
Yeah. We got a load of plaudits. We got, played some good football, but that didn't get us the points.
Yeah, that's it. So we ended up going down, and Denis Smith got the sack not long after that, and it was just not long after he sold Marco Gabardini. Actually, I mean, because he'd been there so long, and because of there was hardly any turnover of players for a good few years. Was that a bit of a shock to all the players that actually this manager had been there all through the last few years, had just suddenly gone?
Yeah, it was a bit of a shock to us. At that time, when you're not winning games, that the pressure's on the manager, the pressure's on the players as well. And you're thinking, what's going to happen? And obviously the change came. It wasn't the best. Obviously, I think Viv Busby went first. He got rid of Viv, so obviously you could see or hear there was obviously a little bit of squabbling behind the scenes, because obviously Denis had been with Viv at York. He's brought him through, the best of mates, and then to see them, shall we say, split at that time just shows you that, it wasn't going well. And then we sold Marco Garbadini to Crystal Palace, brought in Don Goodman. Took time for Don Goodman to get up and running. But obviously the pressure was on Denis to get results, and that's what it was. It's a result-based game.
Yeah. Well, it was a really strange season, because we really struggled in the second division, and Malcolm Crosby kind of took over as caretaker, and there was all sorts of rumours going on. Neil Warnock was supposedly ready to come in, but then this cup run started. That kind of, I think Bob Murray was waiting for this to finish to get his manager in, and Malcolm Crosby was waiting to go and join Denis Smith, and it was all a bit strange. I mean, did the players feel that? I mean, was there this odd kind of difference between, because the league form just kind of nosedived, but you saw us play the likes of Chelsea, West Ham, Norwich. Every time we played in the cup, we were fantastic and looked world beaters, and it was such a strange season and journey to that cup final.
It was indeed. You look back and you look at the games we played in the FA Cup, and you got to remember we were a so-called second division team. You know what I mean? And for some unknown reason, the cup games would come to life. And before you know it, West Ham away, obviously the likes of Kieran Brady was excellent. Young player coming through. And then next minute you're thinking, whoa, hold on a minute, we've got a chance here. And you look at obviously Chelsea, and then you get into the semi-final, against Norwich, and you're thinking, whoa, at Hillsborough, and you're thinking, gosh, we've got a chance here. And obviously when you got the likes of John Byrne in your team, who was in tremendous form, he scored in every round. If you've got somebody in your team who's going to find the back of the net, you've got a chance.
Yeah. And I think that's a perfect place to stop for a quick break, and we'll be back after these few ads.
Big news. Sephora is now on Uber Eats. So if you find yourself facing a beauty emergency, like needing a last-minute gift, or you're just out of your favorite mascara, again, don't panic. We got you. Order now and get $10 off on Sephora orders of $50 or more on the Uber Eats app. Order now. Offer ends October 30th. One order per customer. Additional terms apply. See app for availability. Delivery fees may apply.
Experience a membership that backs what you're building with American Express Business Platinum. Enjoy complimentary access to the American Express Global Lounge Collection and a welcome offer of 200,000 points after you spend $20,000 on purchases on the card within your first 3 months of membership. American Express Business Platinum. There's nothing like it. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
And welcome back to How We're the Podcast. And we were just getting onto that FA Cup final, Gary, because I think it's a generational thing. The FA Cup, I don't think, especially the final, isn't what it used to be. Now, you go back, and I don't want to say how long ago, 30 odd years now, but the FA Cup then, I mean, it was still the era where, they got on the coach at 9 o'clock in the morning, the helicopter was out following the coach in and all that sort of stuff. FA Cup was potentially the biggest thing in football. I mean, globally almost. You've almost European Cup was, you could stick that below the FA Cup. It was massive. I mean, and again, it was one of them you mentioned earlier on where Sunderland just emptied shops. I remember the shops and everything was full of Sunderland. I mean, again, was this, for you growing up with the FA Cup as well, was this, did you realise, and were you thinking, right, this thing's huge, and it was almost about remembering that it's a football match at the end of it?
Yeah, you know how huge it is. As everybody's grown up with the FA Cup, you talk about the FA Cup. In them days, you wake up in the morning, 9, 10 o'clock, straight down in front of the TV, and you watch everything till 5 o'clock. You watch them leaving the hotel, you watch them eating the breakfast, you watch them getting on the coach, you watch them getting off the coach, you watch them going into Wembley. That was your day. That was your day, and you're thinking, wow, how good is that? And then, you find yourself, you're part of it. So, for me to be in an FA Cup final, again, as I've said before, it's a player's dream, to be in the final. And for us, you've got that 2-3 day build up going down to London, obviously getting all the suits and track suits and all sorts going on and interviews, and, it's tremendous. And at that time, going into the FA Cup final, playing Liverpool, at that time, again, we fancied ourselves because Liverpool was in the midst of transition. They were having the best times, and you're thinking, we've got a chance here. And again, touching on John Byrne, we've got a player who scored in every single round. So you're thinking, yeah, we might be able to pull one off here.
Yeah. I mean, can you remember, because walking onto that pitch, because it was a long old walk back then from behind that goal all the way up, and then you had to do all the introductions and you had to line up and all this sort of stuff. Sometimes, is that a distraction that players have to get through? Were you just thinking, I just want to get this game started?
No, I think you're just taking everything in, and again, as I said, as a supporter going down to Wembley, and again, you're talking about the old Wembley at the time, you got 100,000 people, and it's that walk, getting there, lining up, and what you do then, you're looking out into obviously to the seats to see where your family are, and you're thinking, wow, this is it. This is what it's all about. And you're being watched by millions because it's on TV.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you still think sometimes what might have been in that first half?
What might have been, it's always ifs and buts. And you're thinking sometimes to say you should never go back. If only, but then you're thinking, well, if that happened, would we be where we are now?
Yeah.
Would we have gone through what we did? And then you're thinking, would you change everything? That is a big question. If you said, if John Byrne, obviously opportunity went in, would you have taken that and forget about what's happened since then? Or would you just hold your hands up and say, it is what it is, and take what's happened now, what you've been through?
Yeah. Might be worth a risk for an FA Cup win. I'm not quite sure. But Terry Butcher came to the club as a player after that cup final. Then not long into that season, he becomes player manager. But it never quite clicked. And it was, because Kevin Keegan was doing his thing up the road, we thought Terry Butcher would be the same for us. But it never really worked.
No, it never worked. As I said, you had again, that's the pressure of, obviously, in the North East. You've got the two big clubs there, and whatever the other ones do, and you want to do better. And obviously Newcastle at the time, they had Kevin Keegan. We brought in Terry Butcher at the time as a player, then became player manager. And he wanted to, shall we say, compete with Newcastle. Unfortunately, it didn't work.
Yeah. And and again that didn't work and went badly. And then again we kind of appointed from within with Mick Buxton. He came up from reserve team manager. And we kept on struggling really until Peter Reid came in with 7 games left of that. I think it was 94-95 season. You played in these first 3 games and came off injured against Luton Town. I mean, when you came off, did you have any feeling at the time that it was potentially your last game for Sunderland?
No, not at all. I had little inclinations. I know that my contract was up in the summer, and you look back and you don't want to leave the club. I had a conversation with Peter Reid. and obviously there was one or two younger players come in. They had Richard Ord at the time. Mel was there as well. So there was competition for places. And it was a case of, again, I was getting on, shall we say. And I had the opportunity to had a discussion to go to Carlisle, or I could have stayed at the football club. And I just thought, do I want to stay at the football club? Do I want to be on the bench? Do I want to be in and out of the team? I wanted to play. He couldn't guarantee me a place in the team. So I just said, right, I'll move to Carlisle for 6 months. And I look back now and, you're talking about hindsight. And it was the best move I made, because I moved there, played under Mick Wadsworth, did quite well at Carlisle. And then he went to Scarborough. I went to Scarborough as a player coach and played under Mick, and then went to Darlington, and I got into coaching through that. Maybe that might not have happened if I would have stayed at the football club.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you mentioned playing for a long time alongside John McPhail, and I've had some fantastic centre halves that you played alongside with Sunderland, going all the way back to Sean Elliott right at the beginning, and then you've mentioned Richard Ord, Andy Melville, Kevin Ball, I suppose, in that first division before he was moved into being a midfield maestro. But did you have any particular favourites just to maybe complemented your style that you had long periods that you played alongside?
They all wrote something different, the likes of Gordon Chisholm played at centre back as well. The likes of Ian Atkins played at centre back. They were all different. Sean Elliott was an excellent centre back. Even Kevin Ball played at centre back. So yeah, you look at the likes of John McPhail. You knew what you were going to get out of John McPhail. Head it, kick it. That's it. That's his job done. There is no, shall we say, fancy stuff from John. He was just there to win it, and he was very, very good at it. But also, as you know, he was very good at taking penalties as well.
Yeah, well, I was just about to say, I think he scored 16, didn't he, in that Division 3 season?
And I happened to have a bet. He said, I'll have a bet with you, I'll score more goals than him. Not knowing that he was on penalties.
You didn't put that caveat in that penalties didn't count. Well, you mentioned you went into coaching, and of course you ended up having a crack at management at Darlington. Was that something you always fancied?
No, as I said, it was something which I grew into. And I look back, and people said, "Oh, you should have stayed at Sunderland at the time," or whatever. With Peter Reid. But what happened was I went to Carlisle as a senior player, started working with Mick Wadsworth. He went to Scarborough, and he took me in as player coach. So that's how I got into coaching, and I enjoyed it. And from there, I went to Darlington under David Dodgson, who I know Hodgie very well when he was at Sunderland. I went there as a player coach as well at Darlington. And then, obviously, one day, David packed in. I had words with the chairman, who was a colourful character. George Reynolds. And George came to me and said, would you like to take the team over? Would you like to become manager? I thought, wow, great opportunity. I couldn't turn it down. And I enjoyed it. Every bit of it.
Yeah. It was too early for him to try and sign Faustino Australia for you, wasn't it?
It was indeed. But that came after me. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you of course, you carried on coaching, but and we've seen a lot of players come back to Sunderland in certain capacities. Was there ever any opportunity to return to Sunderland, whether it was in the academy or whatever?
Again, I didn't really push it. So what I mean by that is that my son ended up going to Middlesbrough as a young lad, as a 13, 14-year-old. And I got the opportunity to coach at Middlesbrough Academy because I was taking him down 3 or 4 days a week. They turned around and said, would you like to coach? So I says, yes. So I ended up taking the under 12s, under 13s for a time for 2-3 years. I was at Middlesbrough, enjoyed it very well. Some great coaches, Dave Parnaby, excellent. Stan Nixon, fantastic man. And I learned a lot. And then I came away from there. After 3 years, I thought, wow, that's enough for me. And then I got an opportunity to go on the media side.
Yeah. Well, actually, just at that time, Middlesbrough had a really good reputation for bringing players through.
Great reputation. And, you look back at some of the coaches who's there, like Curtis Fleming, Mark Proctor, obviously Mark Tinkler was there. They had some great, ex-players as coaches, and they had, great atmosphere.
Yeah. Well, as we've kind of mentioned, and we're talking about the MBE because you played a big part in show racism, the red card, for a lot of years. And it was 2022 you were awarded the MBE. I mean, that must have been a proud moment, not only when you got the news, but of course when you went down for the presentation.
Yeah, definitely so. Again, we keep talking about these things which you watch on TV. You wake up on obviously New Year's Eve and you just look at the ticker tape or whoever is getting MBEs and you think, what, how good is that and whatever, and them things like are way, above my head. You're thinking that's never going to happen to me. But, I got a letter through the post and it just happened to be around about my birthday time when I got it. And I thought, right, I read it, and you're thinking, "Oh, Gary Bennett, you've been awarded." And I thought somebody was obviously taking a Michael out of me. And the phone went, and I got a phone call, and just says, "Look, you've been awarded an MBE." And I was still in shock, and I rang my kids up. They came round. Rang my wife up. They came round. I said, "Read that," and I read it, and you're thinking, "Wow, it's true." And what from there? Obviously, for your family, especially your kids, you want to take them to, obviously, you want to take them to games. They want to go to Old Traffords and places like that, and all that, and, meet players and meet people. I was able to do that. And then, to go to Windsor, I took my two sons with me to go down to Windsor and took my wife. And at the time, you don't know who's actually going to do the presentation. And unfortunately, at that time, obviously, we lost the Queen. And Charles was made king. And we're thinking, right, okay. We travelled down to Windsor and we turn up, my two sons, my wife, and myself. And we're in a huge room with all different guests as well. And then the rumour come out, he said, King Charles is doing the presentation. This is his first presentation as a king.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, how good can it get? And we went in and we met the king, and fantastic. Yeah. And at the time, the Euros was on, and, England were playing Wales. So we was able to have a little bit of chat about that as well. So that was great. And that, them things which you see now and you pinch yourself and you're thinking, wow, has that happened? And obviously the icing on the cake is getting presented by the king.
Yeah, well, very well deserved. But yeah, let's go into, you said in your media work, BBC Radio Newcastle, working with Nick Barnes. How long has it been now?
21, 22 years we've been working together. And it just goes to show you. So, I go back to, obviously, that conversation with Peter Reid. Do I stay? Do I go? I go to Carlisle. And then you're thinking, okay, you go in there in sort of in a coaching capacity, player coach. And I meet Nick Barnes. Nick Barnes is actually working.
Of course, yeah.
For BBC Cumbria. So great. Got on well with Nick. Talk, hello, bye-bye, do the interviews, whatever. Great. Forgotten about. He goes and works for BBC Radio Newcastle. He's doing the Newcastle games for 6 years. 6 years he was doing it, following them all over Europe, doing all the Premier League games. And then he gets a call to, do you fancy taking Sunderland over, doing the BBC work for Sunderland, commentary for Sunderland? He says, yeah, I'll do that. And then in the back of his mind, he's thinking, well, who am I going to get? Or who can do the summarising? And he rings me up and he says, Gary, he said, all right, Nick, yes, all right, Nick, how are you? Baba. Says, would you like to do some summarising, working on the radio? I said, I've never done it before. He said, oh, look, I'm just come on board. I would like you to come on board. And said, see if it works. And so I said, okay, we'll try it for the first game. And I think we played Hearts or Kilmarnock, one of the team. It was in Scotland, and never looked back since.
Yeah.
So, you just how things work out.
Yeah. 20 years later, that's incredible. But how's it been recently for you to cover Sunderland, do the same journey as you did from the third division up to the top flight?
Oh, it's been great. Yeah. Listen, I get, Sunderland becomes part and parcel of you, believe it or not. It's us. And, you're actually there and you're kicking and you're heading the ball and you want them to win week in, week out. And you get quite passionate about it. And I get quite passionate about it because I want them to do well. And when you see them doing badly, and as you know, we do a phone in after the games, and they've always got something to say, supporters, right or wrong. We've been through some bad periods. And as you've just mentioned, they've been in the third division, being relegated, coming out of the Premier League. Then you're going into the Championship, and people thinking, "Oh, great, yeah, brilliant, we'll bounce straight back." And you get relegated again. You're in Division 1. You're thinking, "Wow, where's this club going?" Everything was all over the place. So we've been through some really, really bad times, and then to see them, shall we say, turn things around. We've had numerous owners, we've had hundreds of players, we've had numerous managers as well, trying to get it right. And then to see somebody come in who, shall we say, first of all, the owners coming in and you're thinking, what have they brought the club for? He's not old enough, and they're going to spend money as they usually do, and never spent any money. And then you get a manager who comes in who nobody's ever heard of, and you're thinking, who is he? Because obviously we was linked with other managers, and you're thinking, now we should be getting him. Then all of a sudden, out of the blue, we get Reggie Lebris, and people think, who's he? Yeah. Nobody knew him. And it's not just the Sunderland supporters didn't know him. Nobody from the media knew him. Nobody, obviously, in football knew much about him. And then you've got this manager who comes in, and you've got to say the way he's managed the club and players and the way he's got results, I think now people are talking about being spoke of by other clubs, what other clubs are looking at him, because he's on the map.
Yeah. And that must have been weird for you to watch as you did that journey as a player. But the other thing I wanted to ask you about, the other thing it must be strange for you to see is Sunderland have this success in the last few years in strips that are based on strips that you wore when you played for Sunderland.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? You're talking about retro, but it's just like going back, and the supporters have picked that up. And they've picked it up, and shall we say, it's like not reflection, but it's memories of the good old days. Or obviously you've got the navy blue shirts, Vaux, and they've got all the old Hummel, what's all come back now, and it seems as though it's brought a good vibe, good spirit, good times back. Players have brought into that.
Yeah. Do you get a little bit of a sense of pride of that? Because you're looking at Sunderland playing in that navy blue shirt that was based on because of we talked about the Newcastle semi-final, because that was such a big thing in Sunderland's history. We've based our current shirt on it, 30 years later or whatever it is. I mean, you must take a little bit of pride in that.
I take a little bit of pride in it, but you've got to, again, I keep saying, hold your hands up to the football club. You've got to say the marketing and what they've done, and the thoughts which have gone behind it, to bring these shirts back. It's a huge gamble. When you're thinking about Hummel, and a lot of the, shall we say, majority of the supporters might not have remembered the Hummel or the white jerseys or the navy blue, but they've got on there and they've looked into it, and I would say they're brought into it as well, because the old Hummel tracksuits have all come back. I remember when the Hummel tracksuits come out, and I had mine, in my wardrobe for over 20 odd years.
Really?
And then I packed it up and sent it off to the charity shop. Then, 2 months later on, it came back out, didn't they?
Yeah.
So I lost it.
Oh.
You're thinking to yourself, they're never going to come back on show. They're never going, it's been up there gathering dust for that long. And then 2 months before they launch it, I get rid of it, send it to a charity shop, and as you know, they're bestsellers.
Wow, unbelievable timing. But I mean, talking about the market and looking at on the pitch, are you surprised? I mean, did it amaze you how big we've gone when we've really we've just thrown the kitchen sink at trying to stay in the Premier League?
Yeah. Again, everyone's, you look back at when we was in the Championship and people talking about if we go up, we'll need 5 or 6 players to get us, to have a chance of staying in the Premier League. I said, oh, okay, fair enough, but let's get up first and then deal with it. Nobody was expecting us to get up because of the age of the team. It was very young at the time, but we had some very, very good players. And you've got to say, all of a sudden, we've got a chance here, when we kept up there, stayed up there, and then all of a sudden you're in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And you look back and obviously the Coventry game and memories of that Coventry game home and away. But then the final, you're just thinking, and again, I keep talking about the marketing. How did it come up till the end? That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
To come up with that, sorry, say quote or saying till the end, and you've seen it and the way we went about it, and to do it against Coventry and thinking, people are thinking it can't get any better, can it? Wow, what we've seen and what we've witnessed, and that is Sunderland all over. And then you go to Wembley, and you're thinking, after the first, obviously, at first half, you're thinking, ooh. And as he said, till the end, and then you've got Tommy Watson, who, previously, weeks ago, people said he shouldn't even be at the football club. To do what he done, and the football club to do what they've done, and the way they've done it, it's what dreams are made of, aren't they? As a supporter or as a player, we talk about 73, but whoever was there for that final against Sheffield United will live with them for the rest of their lives. It's the best feeling ever. The whole weekend, the way we went about it, how we got there, it's something which you'll never ever forget.
Yeah, if only you could bottle it. 7 games so far, and of course we've got 11 points from those. What's impressed you most so far of this? Well, I suppose this new team, really. We can almost call it the Premier League team, can't we?
Yeah, you look back and you're thinking, yeah, we got into the Premier League. People saying, right, we need to buy. And everybody was saying, need at least 6 players to survive. But to bring in, 12, 13 new players, a new team, a lot of players who we've not really heard of. Everyone's talking about the amount of money which we've spent. And you're thinking, whoa, where does this come from? Nobody was expecting that. Nobody at all to spend that amount of money. And you're thinking, is it going to work? Is it going to gel? And you've got to say, what we've seen so far, people sitting up now, and they're actually taking note of Sunderland, and they're applauding Sunderland, and the way they've gone about the games, the points they've got, the results they've got. But what we've got to do now is got to keep doing it. Got to continue doing the work what we're doing. It's not been easy. It's been hard work, but hard work will get you success. And I think that's something which the manager's trying to get over to the players themselves. But, we've made some tremendous signings, but it's a long, long way to go yet. As I said, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Yeah. I mean, just thinking about that new team, if you put your player's hat on, and let's say, back in the day, Denis Smith signed 13, 14 players or whatever it is, and then you were like, "Oh, I'm not even going to get 1 minute in the top flight because he doesn't think I'm good enough," even though I kind of got us there.
Yeah.
I mean, can you put yourself in that position and kind of put yourself in the position of some of those players?
Yeah, you can, because what happens there is that all of a sudden you're bringing in quality players. Now you've got to, shall we say, get up to the level where they are. If you're not, you're going to fall away. No, it's a challenge. It's that competition for places. Now you've got to think, right, I'm going to fight for my place here. I'm going to prove how good I am. I'm going to learn from these players as well. And if you do that, then you'll force your way into the team.
Well, just looking at those 7 games, which one like performance impressed you the most so far?
Which one? I think, you look at, obviously, when we went down to 10 men, the way we changed things around. That was a tremendous, because all of a sudden you're down 10 men and everybody's thinking, oh, we're going to get beat 2 or 3-0 here, against Villa. But the way they turned it around, and go on and win the game, fantastic, great team spirit, and you can see that they've got a tremendous team spirit there. You're seeing that against Nottingham Forest as well, when they got a great result on Crystal Palace. And again, good teams are built from the back, and that's the foundation. If you don't, I keep saying, if you don't concede, you're not going to lose games. As simple as that, and that's the way forward. We're not going to. Shall we say, we're not going to outplay teams. These teams in the Premier League, you've got to show them respect. They're good teams, got some very, very good players. We're not going to outplay them. But what we can do, we can frustrate them. We can keep solid, make it difficult for them to break us down, to score goals. But we'll get opportunities. And when they do come, then that's very important that we do take them.
Yeah. And it probably said a lot that we came away from Old Trafford slightly frustrated we didn't get something out of it. But do you think in defeat at Manchester United, actually the manager and the players learned a lot?
Yeah, they did learn a lot. And I think, if you look at the Manchester United result and you look at the goals which we conceded, they weren't happy with the goals. Now, there was an occasion in the football when the second goal went in, what the players done. They got themselves into a circle. They had a conversation. They've got, and they must have been saying, look, if we don't pull our socks up, we can get beat 4 or 5 here. And, they weren't happy with the goals which they conceded. But that was the team spirit, them, not individually, but as a group, got themselves together and said, look, let's cut out the mistakes. Let's get ourselves back into the game. And you've got to say, he changed things around. Dringer had to come off. He brought on Ballard, which made a difference. But we're going to have games like that. Everyone's thinking, well, people said, oh, you picked the wrong team. It wasn't the wrong team the week before. It was the right team because we got the results. It's all about results. When you get the results, it's best selection is made. When you get wrong results, well, you should have done this, you should have done that, we shouldn't have played him, we shouldn't have played that, we should have played this formation. So you're always going to get questioned. You look at Man United. Yeah, Man United, they deserve to win. They got the early goal. That sort of breeded confidence amongst their players. All of a sudden, you've got, Mason Mount, who's a good player. All of a sudden, he felt confident and he started playing well. We all know about Ahmed and what a tremendous player he is. He's, again, they might have a little go at the Musisaku, who played at left back. He should have done better, but whoever played left back against Ahmed that day would have been tortured because he was on fire. That's sometimes you got to hold your hands up, and sometimes you got to say, he did well. He's a good player. It's the same when we talk about Xhaka. He's a good player. But he needs to be playing like that every single week for us to, hopefully get results.
Yeah. And Wolves next, but then the fixture list gets a little more difficult during December, let's say. I mean, how do you see the rest of the season? Do you think that we're not really going to see where we stand in this Premier League until maybe the new year once we've got through that set of fixtures?
look, we've got to take each game as a come. And people keep saying, "Oh, that game's easy, that game's difficult." They're all difficult games. They've got to be at it every single game. It's going to be a test come December, January, because we've got African Nations Cup. Yeah. Now we're going to lose some players. Now, it's how we deal with that. Who comes in and who doesn't come in, and hopefully we might be able to get results. But saying that, no matter who we play, they're all difficult games. You're talking about Man United, but difficult game. It's not an easy game, even though they're going through a bad period. At the end of the day, it's how we go about the games. The same with, you play the likes of your Liverpools or your Chelseas or, your Arsenals or your Man Cities. Yeah, they're the games which you look forward to playing, because for me, they're the tests. I want to test myself. You want to test yourself. You want to test yourself against the best. But it's simple as that. How good are you? And they're going to be difficult games. But as a group, you're thinking, well, yeah, okay, we'll have a go and see how good you are. But also you're thinking, you might go into the game and you're thinking, well, it's not as hard as what I thought it was going to be. We've got opportunities there. We might be able to cause them a problem, and you grow with confidence. Then all of a sudden you think, we might get a result here.
Yeah.
There's going to be ups and downs. People look at Wolves and say, oh, that's 3 points. There's no guarantee of 3 points. You've got to earn the right. And that's going to be the thing for every single game we're playing.
Yeah. Well, 11 points after 7 games. What's your gut telling you? Are we going to finish 17th or above?
I would like to think so. Fingers crossed. And again, I don't want to get carried away. There's still a lot of hard work. Before a ball was kicked in the Premier League, like myself, everybody else was saying, I want to get the first points on the board, the first point, 3 points, you get that. And then you think, and then you want to build on that. And then you're thinking you want a home win. Then you want to get something away. And then you're thinking, you want clean sheets. Then you want to get to double figures. We got to double figures now. You're thinking we're on 11. Can we get to 15? Then, you keep setting yourself targets and you're thinking, well, if we could have, 20 points by Christmas, then you're thinking, yeah, we're on the right track.
Yeah. And here's me thinking that you were going to say, yeah, me and Nick's getting carried away. We're checking our passport for the Conference League next season for your trips to Lithuania and Latvia.
Down with a bump. That's football for you. One day you're up, next day you're down. So, you don't get carried away. Yeah, fantastic. We've done really, really well. But you got to look forward to the next game, which is obviously Wolves at home. And you're thinking, right, if we can get something at Wolves, that takes you on to the next game, which is obviously Chelsea away, which is another difficult game for all of us. So, yeah, the more points or the quicker we can get points on board, then, yeah, we can go a little bit more, shall we say, confident. But at the meantime, done tremendously well, but let's not get carried away.
Yeah. Well, we'll look forward to listening to you talk through what will hopefully be another 3 points for the lads against Wolves. But that just leaves me to say thank you very much for your time, Gary. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we really appreciate it as always, mate.
Thank you. Cheers.
Good stuff. Cheers, Gary. And thanks again for everyone for listening. We'll have loads during the international break. We'll have historical stuff and more comment on this current side going into the Wolves game. So look out on the Roker Report website or our daily releases on How We're the Podcast. But from us, bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.